Hello and welcome to The Toughest Choice. I'm Stephanie Reynolds. I am delighted to have as my guest today, Denise Wolfe. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Denise and then she'll tell us a little bit more. Denise helps people and organizations find clarity, connection, and direction, especially during times of growth, transition, or challenge. With a unique blend of leadership coaching, strategic consulting, and trauma-informed care, Denise brings both systems thinking and human insight to her work. Her experience spans industries like tech, retail, and distribution, giving her a deep understanding of how organizations function and how the people within them can thrive. Well, welcome, Denise. It's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you. I'm super happy to be here with you. This is great.
I know that background of yours that we referred to just a second ago includes some real leadership roles, some senior leadership roles. Can you talk about those just a little bit so our audience has a sense of a little bit more about your leadership background?
Sure. I find that my sweet spot in leadership is going in to companies who are growing or going through change and either being a leadership influencer at the executive level or taking teams through that. So I've had the opportunity to do that a couple of times where the company was growing. We were ramping up and we were putting systems in place. I was part of executive leadership teams. I played the chief of staff role a couple of times, which I also enjoy because the impact then becomes exponential in terms of what you can do, not only for the individuals, but for the organizations.
Yeah, but for extended periods of time also,
Yes, yes,
like
for
years and
extended
years
years and years.
in
Yes.
senior roles. So I just wanted to underline that a little bit. Well, thank you. Well, let's talk about that leadership experience you've had, and then we'll make our way to how it's informed how you're functioning today. Talk about what drew you to leadership in the first place. What was it that drew you there?
I'm going to say that my road to leadership was through my true desire to make a positive difference from the core and not just working with individual issues and symptoms. And I found that I was drawn to the higher places in organizations because that is where you get to make those kinds of differences. And also, we learn in a variety of ways. I learned how not to be a leader sometimes, in addition to, gosh, I want to give people a different experience. I want them to have a different experience. I want my teams to feel supported and learning and creating an environment where anybody who wanted to thrive could thrive. And so to be in a position to do that, it's truly a pleasure.
Oh, that's really clear. Yeah, no, making an impact and making the experience for those that you have an opportunity to support and lead, make that a better experience, a positive experience. So that's really crystal clear. And so, I ask this of leaders, past leaders, current leaders, a lot because I think we love talking about a success that we've had that really felt like a breakthrough for you. Can you share one or two of those with us?
My successes, two camps, right? They fit into the both camps. My successes in terms of putting in some systems in an organization that really felt meaningful, and then also successes with individuals. And for me, that was seeing people who were hungry or even who doubted themselves and creating the opportunities for them to grow and thrive in their own careers. And that's inside of the organization or outside of the organization, because I really sometimes those next steps aren't inside, but I want them to know that I support their growth and their direction and what they wanted to do. And it was always my delight to stay in touch and to find out where people had gone and what they were doing and how I might have been a part of that. From a systems perspective, I have to say, in an organization that was really just trying to figure stuff out, to be able to be the chief of staff, so to speak, that was not my official title, but to go in and say, here are some things that we can do, and to listen to the employees. I also had a team to talk about how afraid they were and how communication wasn't occurring, to be able to fundamentally shift cultural experiences for those people so that I had individuals coming up to me saying, thank you. One of the things I am cognizant of is the number of times I use I, because we don't do these things by ourselves, right? We do this in company with others. And so I really want to acknowledge that I'm excited to be an influential part of those spaces.
Sure. Well, thank you. And so I'm going to ask you to click in for just a second if you're up for that on, leaders that are basically going to be on this show are those that really are invested in doing the right thing for all the business and for the individuals, because that's what the toughest choice often involves. And so I'm curious for those that you helped move forward in their own evolution and their career and or whether it was internal, external, as you said, to the organization. Can you think of a way or an example? You don't have to use an individual, no naming names if that's not appropriate, of course, but just for our leaders that listen in, because I think a lot of leaders really know that that's the right thing to do, but they may not understand the modality of how to do it and what kind of the steps along the way could potentially look like, because there's a lot of different steps that are involved in accomplishing helping someone truly evolve in their career and grow in their career. So I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit and ask you if you can just kind of articulate the how, the way you approach the how.
The first part for me is really being aligned with the mission, vision, and values of the organization, and then taking that to the teams, clarifying that, understanding the roles, understanding what we need to do to perform as individuals in our different roles, how we come together as a team, and how we come together as individuals, and clarifying that with people along the way. I am a huge believer of if you do have review cycles, there are no surprises. We are communicating regularly. Nobody likes performance improvement plans, but if that's what you need to do, it's only fair to the organization and the individual that that's what needs to happen. And also for teams, if we're moving in different ways and the values are not aligned, we have those decisions, right? It's not about, for me, it's not about, I got the best number, but I stepped on the most people to get there. If that's how you're doing it, then that's not something that we are going to say is a good thing in environments that I want to be a part of. So I think it's really creating the cohesion of the individual performance and allowing them and enabling them to see how what they do makes a difference to the organization, right? How they matter and how when that's not there, we need to talk about why it's important, what the gaps are, and can we close the gaps? Because if we can't, we need to have that discussion as well. And I have had that discussion. And can I give you one more example from an organizational
Yes,
perspective?
yes.
As a person who has an OD background, kind of an HR background, more OD, you're always looking at the organization from two perspectives, your own individual perspective, but also what's best for the health of the organization. And I was in a situation where we were in a position where we needed to lay off people. And we were given a number, which is not a method I recommend, but we were
But not
given a number,
unusual, right? Not
not
unusual.
unusual.
Yeah. A
And
percentage that you had to cut or a
yep,
certain actual number of
a
FTE?
percentage. You
A
needed to come
percentage.
up with a dollar, right?
Yep.
Dollar sign.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In that situation, I said, the only way to protect the people that are here in order to do the jobs that need to be done is for me to leave and for me to basically tell my boss how to redistribute my teams under leaders, because that was the right thing to do for everyone involved.
Wow. That's the super toughest choice. We haven't even gotten to that
No,
question. For you to leave. And is that what happened?
that's what happened.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's what
How did
happened.
you get there in your heart? I mean, was it what you really believed was best for everyone?
There were a couple things that the organization and how I felt I could add value to the organization, there was a little bit of a drift that was occurring. My heart was calling me on to kind of the next steps. But I'm not saying this was an easy decision,
Yes,
right? They
no,
were
you're letting go
pieces.
of livelihood
Yeah, all of the
and
things.
and the role.
And
Yeah.
the role that I'd been in for years that I adored, and I did not want to leave my team. But from a sheer numbers perspective, if I were to come up with the numbers, the impact, the negative impact on the team would have and then thus the organization and the services. I called a bunch of people saying, can we play with this? Can we do something different? I don't know how to do this. I called our finance person and I'm like, wait a minute, this is what we're facing. Is that right? And then I was ultimately having to make that decision.
Powerful. And also sounds like at some level, it also in some way spurred you on to what you were needing to do for yourself. And I think people think we have to sacrifice and therefore it's either us or them. And often I think if we peel back the layers and let things go in a natural direction, opposite sometimes of the fear of change or loss,
Yes.
it can reveal some surprising outcomes. Yeah, that's really powerful. Thank you for sharing that. So I'm going to pivot and
Yes.
ask you a little bit about a leadership experience that you had that didn't turn out well and was really difficult.
I think that goes back to one of my earlier experiences. And part of it was so, as leaders, I think we grow as individuals, right? And that informs our leadership. And so, this was earlier in my career, and I was learning, and I was not aligned with the values, but I didn't get that, right? I didn't get that. So, I was trying to figure out how to make things work. And I'm also like a performer. I think most leaders are performers. And so you try and figure out how to get the A. And in those situations, I was not necessarily effective. I was not communicating in the way that I needed to. I was not supporting in the way that I needed to. And I was fortunate to have people on my team who like said, I need you to wake up.
Uh, uh-huh.
But there was damage that had been done along the way in that learning journey. And I'm not saying that because I've grown and I've learned that there's perfection in that now. There certainly is not. but that's why we keep growing. And that's why it's really important to have the feedback loops and to have trust with people that are you are in relationship with in organizations and in teams to the extent that you can, because I also know about politics and the reality of politics in an organization, but to keep lines open.
Well, thank you. You know, what I'm really hearing is appreciate your vulnerability and recognizing that you were younger in your leadership career, that in the name of performing, in the name of looking good, which is so hugely demanding of leaders. I mean, it's constant, it is in the water, it is always there. That you may have stepped over people or made poor decisions or not treated people as fairly. The other thing, though, that I want to point out that I think is so important is that you had good staff who was able to say, as you said, wake up, Denise, yet you listened and actually paid attention and could accept, not shoot the messenger, and pivot, it sounds like, around your behavior. Because I think there's such a, and tell me if you think I'm right here or wrong, I think there's such a demand in organizations also about being right and not getting it right, but being right. And this not knowing the answer to things or not being aware or self-aware of ways in which you might behave that are not helpful ends up being pushed away and defended against in the name of safety. I'm right, I'm right, I'm right, I'm right. I didn't make mistakes. And so many times the messengers get shot or
Absolutely.
certainly not appreciated. And it's very hard for leaders to, many leaders, to turn over a new leaf, to actually self reflect.
Yes, if I can kind of my two worlds colliding, my therapy world, my coaching world, and leadership world, it is not unusual if our self is defined by performance, that being in a place that colludes with that, if I can use that word, forces you into that metric, right? And so to not have that metric not only is about how you're showing up at work, but oh my gosh, how do you feel about yourself? If your self worth is tied to that, then defensiveness is the first line of defense. One other example, I went into an organization and they were going through change. And as I started getting into what was going on teams and what we were doing, I became a part of a project meeting. And the project had been going on for a long time. People knew it was not going to work,
They
but
knew
they
it.
weren't going to say anything.
Nobody was
They
going
were just going to keep going because it was a culture of fear. Now, for all the reasons those things are developed, right? And so we opened the gates, we shone the light in, we started having discussions, and that we then talked about who we wanted to be as an organization and the culture. And we put systems in that reinforced that so that we had checkpoints and milestones out in the open, not to say things are bad, but to say, do we need to pivot? Let's
Yeah,
talk about it.
yeah, I love it. I love that example. How many meetings, for those of you that are listening to this, how many meetings, how many project teams have you been on where you've known that you weren't going anywhere, it was going to blow up eventually, or it was wasted time and effort and money, and it just sucks the life out of you. It it sucks the life out of you because people go to work for a lot of reasons. One of them is we love getting things done with others. We just love that. We love checking those boxes off. And if you're in or on a project that is, you know, a bridge to nowhere, then that's got to be life draining, just life draining. So those leaders that can be woken up or wake up and have the courage to raise their hand and say, sorry, I think we got to look at this, or those systems and put into place those systems that you were speaking to, which are built in modalities to keep communication current, to keep it current.
Yes.
That's fabulous. So let's move over into your current role, multifaceted role in life. So I know you do leadership coaching. I know you do systems and organizational consulting, and you do mental health counseling. So talk about why that combination and what drew you to make that shift out of being in leadership to supporting individual leaders and organizations.
Yeah, it's kind of the pull through of continuing to make a difference for people and helping them see things in ways they haven't seen them before. The genesis for me starts with honestly all the stuff that we talk about these days, attachment stuff, how we learned, how we add value, how we learned how to be in this world, the false self, the that is often rewarded, that is the successful person, that is the type A, that is the one that is always out there ramping up, but what's beneath that, or the one who says yes to everything because there's compliance and that's what they feel like they're rewarded for and they can't say no, which of course impacts their teams in addition to the quality of life. And then how does that all come together in this mishmash called organizations, right? To have them being successful or not. And you don't get often to the higher levels of an organization, quite honestly, without having some of that stuff going on. And so, how do we begin to take that back a little bit, begin to understand it, begin to value the parts of you that are there and understand that you can be fully who you are, thriving in an environment and not have to defend against vulnerability, perceived threats, all of those things.
Mhm. And so, just to paraphrase, I think you're saying it's a continuation for you.
Yes.
What drove you to leadership has also driven you into these other ways of supporting.
Yes.
And I'm hearing a thread is true self,
True self.
authentic self.
Yep.
I'm really thinking about what's the biggest challenge for people, do you think, whether you're coaching them or working within the org or counseling them? What do you think the biggest challenges are to being your authentic self, your authentic leadership self, your authentic self in your life? You've seen so many different modalities, organizations, and individuals. What are the big challenges?
Oh, there are a couple. Number one is most people think they are being their authentic selves.
Ah,
There's so how are these issues coming up for you that have you engaging in this kind of conversation? And so let's start from there. What is anxiety? What is depression? What is panic and anxiety? What is that? What keeps you running with the inability to pause? What are you afraid of in the pause?
what do individuals, and not everyone's the same, but what do individuals find and are feeling safe, supported enough to actually pause?
They connect with themselves, body, mind, and spirit. Because generally what happens is they've disconnected their thinking brain, their intellect from their body experience.
Yeah. I just want to say hallelujah. Yeah, it's so hard. It's so hard to be, we're so brain. We're like, oh, our whole thing is our head. And then we go to the gym to work out our body
Yes. Yes.
instead of realizing it's actually one package.
Yes. And that workout is generally from this perspective because you think that's what you need to do as
The
opposed to,
workout from
yes,
the neck up.
the
Yeah.
performance perspective. Yes.
Yeah. 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 Okay. So that's one thing they find when they slow down. When we slow down, and I say they, it's me, it's all of us, slow down enough to actually pause is to see how we're really not integrated. We're not connected. We're just driven by
Yes.
what we think will keep us happy and safe.
Yes.
Do you have some other thoughts about that?
I want to say that there's a reality of politics, right? If you are working in organizations where there is a lot of toxicity, the last thing you want to be is vulnerable, right? You want to figure out within the context of that environment, how do you stay safe and sane? Is it possible? And then if it's not possible, what choices do you have? And what choices do you want to make? But at least let's get it to a conscious choice place. It's not, as I call it, it's not all unicorns and butterflies,
No,
right?
no, no, no.
There's just the reality of living in tough times sometimes and tough spaces and having a family and food to put on the table and bills to pay and not being able to jump from this job to this job and all that stuff that is a part of the equation of how you're showing up.
And I think that's very real. I think unpacking it is what you're talking about,
Yes.
and then being real about it,
Yes.
and recognizing that you do have choices when you make them, if you make them, how you make them is dependent on the risk and the perception of, the fear of change. We all have that. We want that, that recognition, the power, the safety, the money. And so helping people unpack what's real for them and what does that mean. I want to also add, tell me what you think, Denise, is that, it's not like organizations set out to create toxic environments. It's not intentional. It's not, a lot of times there are philosophies about, how to lead, and that, if we lead through fear, carrot and stick, basically, that we're going to get the best results. And we don't really want to pay attention to the impact of those carrots. And sometimes, I mean, we think the stick is bad, but the carrot can be bad.
Absolutely.
The carrot can actually reinforce negative behaviors to get to
Yes.
positive results.
Yes. Yes. It's all about performance. It's all
Yeah.
about, yes, being right, being right. Yeah.
Yes. And so, and organizations are created and formed by people
Yes.
and run by people who they themselves are just trying to do their jobs and not get into trouble and make it work and have great experiences. So it's not like there are, the ones that people are all aware that they're really creating these environments. I think there are some who may be aware of it and don't care or think it's the best option, but I don't think that's the vast majority at all. Would you agree?
I think that's true. And let's say I'm defining toxic based on my personal beliefs about how you get the best performance out of individuals and what those environments are like, right?
Yep.
My values may be different from someone else's, right? There are many people who have written many business books about force rank someone, put it on the desk, the bottom third goes, let's keep going, right? that's not my value system of how to get. And so I just want to acknowledge that there are different perspectives.
I love it. Well, and it's lovely to just kind of unpeel this together too, so that people understand. I hope that those that are listening can kind of take away a thought about, what kind of environment am I in? Does it align with my values? And how can I safely navigate this? And does it allow me to be my authentic self? Because as coaches, we both know that a lot of times that's what we're working with individuals is helping them find their truth
Absolutely.
and their voice.
Yes.
And many times they don't understand what's required as a senior leader in terms of what people need from you and how to set limits. Some people are not as strong at that.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's required and what's the impact of not doing the work that you need to do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, this is great. I'm going to ask you one more question.
Okay.
Well, I could talk to you all afternoon, of course. And we were talking about toughest choice. I do want to hear at the end so maybe two more questions about your personal toughest choice. But since we're in this authentic leadership, authentic self part of the conversation, I'd love to ask you, what do you think is needed today from leaders?
I think it speaks to exactly why you're doing this podcast. It's courage. It is courage to speak, to stand for what needs to be said. Say it. It's to not look away. It's to not think that you can't make a difference. Leaders, that's what we do, right? That's why we're leaders. We want to make a difference. And so if you are in a room full of people who are requiring you to be silent and your truth is being squashed, be courageous.
Mm,
Be courageous.
powerful, really powerful and true, really true. Okay, so my truly last question for this conversation is about a point in your career, in your life, where you found yourself faced with a toughest choice and what that might have looked like for you.
Truly, the toughest choice for me was recognizing that the way I was living my life was no longer working
Uh-huh.
and that I had to make different decisions. I had to step away from the security that I had always known. And that was far more than just, laying myself off. It was going on the personal journey to find out what was beneath everything I packed on to my performance self. Um, that was and to hang in there, hang in there, hang in there, and keep going and keep looking and keep going and keep looking. That was truly my toughest choice.
What I love about that, Denise, is you sat and lived in the seat of what we were describing early on, certainly in your career, what you were describing about the barriers to authentic self and authentic leadership. And then you had to go through your own reckoning in order to let go of the security and the patterns. And then take that, journey that you've been through so that when you talk to people about this in your coaching or counseling, you've been there.
I know.
It's not just good advice. You've lived it.
Yes.
And that's why I'm sure people get so much out of the time that they have with you, for real.
Thank you.
This has been a fascinating conversation and one I know we could dive much deeper into
Oh,
another
indeed.
time. So Will you promise me you'll come back on the show again?
I would love it.
Okay.
I would love it.
I would love to have you back.
Thank
And
you.
I so appreciate the time you took to be with me today. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for asking.
Thank you for listening. To hear more conversations with leaders, please subscribe to The Toughest Choice wherever you listen to podcasts. For updates, please connect with me on LinkedIn. This is Stephanie Reynolds. Thanks for listening.